Hi, this is Jim Breon. Welcome to this YouTube channel where we discuss all things mental health. What I'm going to be talking about today is one way of a person learning more about themselves and their personality. And it's something that we refer to as the big 5 factors of personality. This is based on years of research and has been applied in lots of different ways to help people gain more understanding about themselves, about other people. And it's applied in lots of different ways, from therapy to career counseling. It's even used in business to make hiring decisions. And what it is the big 5 personality factors are factors of personality that when you see the interplay of these different factors on a continuum, it really gives some insight as to how a person kind of shows up in the world and how we develop a personality. It reflects how the person thinks, how they feel, and how they act in the world. Now, when we talk about personality traits, these are traits that are relatively stable over time, although they're not written in stone, so to speak. Personality traits can change over time. And especially if somebody is doing some long-term psychodynamic or attachment-focused therapy, people can change personality traits. The way that it works is, we look at these 5 different traits and how people rate either higher or lower on the spectrum. And it's often referred to by an acronym OCEAN, OCEAN. So the O stands for openness to experience. The C is conscientiousness. E is extroversion. The A stands for agreeableness. And N is for neuroticism. So to start off with, openness to experience or openness to new experience really kind of looks at how a person is either on one end of the spectrum kind of rigid and inflexible, maybe closed-minded, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, very open-minded, curious, non-judgmental. Meaning that when a new experience comes up, that you're open to trying that. You're open to new experiences with different kinds of people. The second element is conscientiousness, which really looks at whether a person is kind of irresponsible, kind of rash, will say things that hurt people and they don't really care about it, or they don't really care about other people, or whether somebody is considerate, reliable, caring. And on the extremes, this is where you could start to see things like perfectionism. Extroversion and introversion is, extroversion is basically when a person is sociable, assertive, and its opposite is introversion. Now, introversion and extroversion are interesting qualities to explore, and I think they're often misunderstood. Introversion and extroversion are essentially ways that a person manages their energy. Introverts are not necessarily shy people. They're actually people who can be sociable, but they have limits around the sociable aspects of their lives. They want to limit it to smaller groups, or maybe 1 or 2 people at a time, and big groups of people might be overwhelming energetically, whereas an extrovert is really just the opposite. And on the extreme part of the continuum with extroversion is people that seek attention. When we look at the trait of agreeableness, we think about people who on the very low end of agreeableness might be callous, deceitful, narcissistic, self-serving. And on the opposite end are people that experience things like compassion and trust. Now, again, to the extreme, somebody can become submissive if they have an extreme in agreeableness and they don't have a certain amount of assertiveness as well. And then we look at the trait of neuroticism. Neuroticism is basically the tendency that a person has towards anxiety, depression, rumination, these types of things. At the low end of the spectrum is somebody who's kind of shameless, doesn't experience a lot of anxiety. And on the far far end of the spectrum is somebody who, tends to be very anxious, ruminative, and can even experience depression. When we talk about low levels of neuroticism, people that don't experience anxiety, far end of the spectrum, there are two kinds of people that never have anxiety, and that's dead people and psychopaths. But those different traits, when you look at them in total on their continuums, it can really help people understand the nature of their own personality and why they think and feel and do things the way that they do. And people can also vary on those specific elements too. So an extroverted person can be sociable but not assertive. And an introverted person can at times act more extroverted when they need to. These are traits that are measured on various questionnaires that you can take to understand your personality. Now, there are other elements that go into personality formation as well, as far as temperament. This is something that people are born with. People can be born with a temperament where they tend toward obsessiveness or flexibility, where they tend towards calm or maybe dysregulated emotions. And there's also the interplay of nature and nurture. In other words, the family, culture, and society that we grow up in. So what does the Big Five actually tell us? Again, it helps us to develop understanding and awareness of ourselves and others. It's often used in things like career planning, helping people identify career paths that are in line with you as a person. Because when you're doing a job that is in line with who you are as a person, that's what we think of as a career as opposed to a job. Understanding some of these personality traits and your personality in total can be really helpful in people navigating differences in relationships and managing conflict. So it can be one aspect that can help to inform people about how they show up in the world and the reasons why. The Big Five and other personality assessments are used often to help understand, predict, and plan career paths, can help understand and predict health outcomes, relationships, and even academic outcomes. Now, one caveat is this whole idea of these Big Five personality traits. First of all, it's a Western concept. So we have to be careful about looking only through the lens of Western conceptualization and projecting that onto other cultures. But what we do know about some of these traits is that people that are higher in neuroticism, for instance, they tend to experience more anxiety and depression. People that are higher on extroversion, some studies have shown have a higher subjective well-being, although that's not always the case. And people fall on continuums, so not into discrete boxes or categories. And there are other ways of understanding personality as well. There's another instrument for looking at personality that's called Hexaco, and it basically takes a lot of those same elements of personality, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, but then it adds in another element of emotionality as opposed to neuroticism, and also something that they label as honesty-humility, which is a dimension or sort of a degree to which a person either promotes or doesn't promote their own self-interest above other people. This is one trait that can be valuable in assessing levels of narcissism and some personality disorders. It also includes sincerity, modesty, fairness, interest or disinterest in wealth and status symbols. And this measure also includes aspects of sentimentality and proneness to anger. Aside from these different personality assessments, there are some others that are pretty well known and can have some effective results in helping people understand themselves and understand other people. One of them is the Myers-Briggs personality inventory that measures personality on a matrix of introversion, extroversion, whether somebody senses things in the environment or uses their intuition, whether they tend to think through things or whether they feel to make decisions, and whether they're judging or perceiving. Another very effective assessment that looks not just at personality, but also at internal drives and how a person shows up when they're healthy in an average state or when they might be struggling emotionally and psychically. And that's called the Enneagram. The Enneagram looks at different personality traits through 9 different lenses and becomes very complex, but it can be a very interesting and in-depth assessment at helping a person understand themselves. And then there are things like the 16-factor 16P assessment that looks at 16 different personality traits. You know, none of these assessments explain everything about a person, and they're all just sort of snapshots that might help to explain why a person thinks, feels, and does the things that they do. But they can help to create more understanding and awareness, and can be one element of helping a person look more holistically at their own mental health. If you've ever taken any of these assessments or have questions about them, I encourage you to leave comments and maybe start a discussion about this and let me know what you think. If the videos are helpful, I encourage you to like and subscribe and sign up for notifications. We'll let you know when more material is coming out. Take care of yourself.